All right. Hello, VC. This is Melvin Ramon. Let's talk about music. It's been a while since I did one of these. Gonna get back into it, I think. I've been home. I had the Rona last week, so I've been kind of sitting around doing nothing and playing a lot of records and thought, hey, might as well take some time to chat about it. Fine from the Roma, by the way. Don't get it. It sucks. Anyway, first up, this is the White Stripes at the Detroit Institute of Arts, November 2nd, 2001. This was part of Third Man Records Vault package. It's a limited edition thing. It came with a 7-inch and a DVD of the show. I have not watched the DVD yet or played the 7-inch. I usually don't go for the subscription stuff. I work at a record store, so I pretty much get the vast majority of my music from there. And online subscriptions usually, it's spending a lot more than I normally do for a record, and I feel like I have a little less control over it. But this one I did go to because I and my wife and I attended this gig, actually. So I thought it was pretty neat to have a show that I'd been at released. Plus, if I go and when I watch the video of it, it came on that smoky clear vinyl. When I go to watch the video of it, if it turns out there is an image of my wife and I in the crowd, that would make it something that I would absolutely have had to add. So I ordered it. It's a pretty good live album. The sound there is pretty good. I remember it being a great live show, and it does, I think, at least listening to it myself, kind of translate pretty well. Vinyl Richie showed this, so I know it's been around the community a few times, but I think it's a pretty good live album. Those things start to get to be worth a lot of money, I would think, unless you're a pretty big White Stripes fan. If you don't have it already, the Under the Great White Northern Lights should cover your live White Stripes album needs. But, if you're a big fan and you're curious about it, it is a pretty darn good live album. And I remember that being, just a stellar show. Not just the performance, but they were performing in front of the Detroit Industry frescoes, which are my favorite painting ever. So it was a really cool, neat ambient thing. I don't think I've seen any shows there in quite a while, but that was a pretty great concert, and so it's cool to have that on vinyl. My last update, I talked about my obsession with Robert Pollard. They did just reissue one of his best solo albums. It's just black vinyl. Don't need to show you that. From a Compound Eye. This was done roughly around the time the end of the band Guided by Voices original run. The Guided by Voices albums at that point were a little more full, almost full studio productions. They had kind of he had moved a little bit away from the sort of lo-fi aspect for those last few albums, and his solo albums at that point were a little bit more of a return to the raw basement sound. This one, though, I think was where he started moving he was kind of winding down he's winding down Guided by Voices and bringing the bigger productions to his solo albums, and then the side projects for a while had the more lo-fi sound. But until you've heard a couple dozen of his albums, those differences aren't going to be really huge. But this is one of his best set of songs. It's actually a double album, so it's one of the, even by his standards, there's a lot of them. It's a really good album. I'm glad they finally they reissued it in vinyl, because originals of that were completely out of hand. Speaking of lo-fi stuff from that era, in live records, Ween has issued Live at the Cat's Cradle. Originally, this was a DVD release with a bonus CD, or a CD with a bonus DVD, however you want to look at it, of a concert. This was in the original era of the band, when it was just the two of them and a drum machine live. So they're leaning a little harder on their brownness or weirdness and rawness, and a little bit more what you might call, kind of questionable humor. I happen to think it's pretty funny, but you know, and a lot of people find it kind of gross and maybe even slightly offensive, or more than slightly offensive. Uh, Another great live performance, and it captures, you know, that early era of the band, which is kind of a whole different ball game than from the records then on. They had additional musicians and they would tour with a full band so that they would improvise, because early on it was just the two of them in a drum machine with a tape deck for all the other parts. So, you know, it was all, they just had to play the songs like they were, and there wasn't quite as much jamming or you know, kind of improvised aspect to their sound. So it's a little more raw and a little more, you know, kind of punkish. But I happen to love that stuff. I think it's great. And that's really the Ween that I like the best. And that's great to have a live album of that. Another one that I acquired recently. This was repressed. This is Swans, Children of God. This is from the 90s, so before they broke up the first time or went on hiatus. It's just on black vinyl. This happens to be my favorite Swans album. You know, it's just dark, heavy, massive sounding, crushing. But at this point, they had started to put in some, you know, darker folk aspects at times. I think this is, like I said, I think this is the best one. I'm glad this is back on vinyl, although it was kind of tricky to get. I actually had to order it. Wasn't getting it through the shop for some reason. It wasn't coming in, but glad I did it, because I am glad to have that on vinyl. It is one of my favorites. One of my favorites from last year. I kind of been pulling it out at the end for some reason. This is one of the ones that's come back around. This is Segall Harmonizer. This is his latest solo album. It is, you know, I've been describing it. It's almost like Gary Newman with some fuzz guitars going on. It's just on black. I got just the black vinyl pressing. No notable insert or anything. Oh, well, yeah, it's got lyrics on the insert. Some people may want to check that out a little bit. Like I said, sound-wise, to me, this kind of, I've been telling people it sounds to me like Gary Newman with some fuzz guitars. With Ty Segall, I like a lot of his stuff. How much I like his albums tends to, because he changes his sound almost every project, and it's mainly just an issue of how much is the sound he's working with on this record in my wheelhouse, and how much is he kind of doing a thing that I'm not as into. This one I actually really like. When I heard the sound of it, I kind of thought, well, I don't know if this is going to be one of them. But after even just half a spin through, it really did sink in. I really enjoy that record. I think it's one of his better ones, and it's one of my favorites of the year. Another of my favorite year, moving on to metal here, Exodus, Persona Non Grata. Exodus are, of course, one of the classic Bay Area thrash bands. It was Kirk Hammett's band before he left to join Metallica way back when. This is on red and mustard splattered vinyl, I think is what they called it. I'm not usually into that kind of thing, but they did catch my attention with mustard. You know, if you've ever noticed a mustard stain on my shirt, there's a reason for it. Love this cover. You know, this is Gary Holt, for a while from this band, was playing guitar in Slayer after Jeff Hanneman died. And so, you know, this is him kind of returning from years of Slayer to do Exodus again. Impeccably produced, just awesome thrash album. I've said before, and I continue to, that I think, you know, all of the sort of second tier thrash bands like Exodus, Testament, Voivod, Death Angel, etc., have all just been really good in their later years. In these later years, they're really still, you know, a lot heavier. I mean, those guys are getting up there, but they're still pretty intense, heavy stuff. And the sound, I think, holds up really well to time, at least for my ears. And I think that's no exception. And it's one of my favorites of the year. Great heavy album. Another heavy thing, I've been really excited, another reissue. This is Brutal Truth. Extreme conditions demand extreme responses. Pause on that there. Got a gatefold with some lyrics there. This is on Earache's full dynamic range vinyl. I'm not sure what the point of that with a grindcore record would be. It's a relatively lo-fi production. If you're not familiar with these guys, this is from 1992. It was so it's fairly early. Not quite in that really early grindcore with like the early Napalm Death and Repulsion, Terrorizer and stuff, but still pretty early on for grindcore. It's some of the most extreme stuff out there. Really fast, gnarly, growly vocals. These guys are some of my favorites at grindcore, and this is, I think, just one of their best albums. I never really was a fan of the artwork when it was on a CD, but seeing it full size, I'm actually pretty into it. looks pretty good and kind of gives a feel for the music, I think. Anyway, excited to have that, and I'm glad it's out. One last one. I'm going to show it in the plastic real quick because of the hype stickers with it. This is a reissue on Impulse, their acoustic sound series of Charles Mingus, the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. This gets in there. It's just black vinyl. This is a very, very nice sounding pressing of one of my favorite Mingus records, and I have been kind of obsessively listening to this and T1 Moods in my car on CD for the last little while. Just kind of really, if you care enough to watch a video about records, I'm pretty sure you're going to know who Charles Mingus is and what it is he does and what was special about him. But been really enjoying that lately. And so anyway, yeah, that is just a recent vinyl. I don't know about finds because most of this is stuff I ordered, but recent vinyl acquisitions, things that I've been listening to. Anyway, thanks for watching, and hopefully it won't quite be so long before I see you again.